Hello, everybody. Welcome to Executive Benefits Simplified with Benefit RFP. My name is Bob .nienaber. I'm one of the founders of Benefit RFP. I'm joined today with David Cox, one of my senior executive distribution partners. And we're going to talk today about conversations that we see come up all the time with executive benefits. They will always want to compare, people always want to compare qualified plans with non-qualified plans. And specifically, are non-qualified plans legal? Are they real? How can you have all these benefits? Does the IRS really let this happen? So we're going to talk about those, and the goal is to keep it simplified, short and sweet, to the point. And at the end, we'll give you our contact information. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. So David, with that, I will start with, what is a qualified plan?
Well, that doesn't have to be so simple, but we'll do our best to make it simple today. The IRS and DOL certainly don't make this simple. But at the end of the day, when we're talking qualified plans, we're talking about things that most people have heard of. 401ks. If you're a not-for-profit, we're talking like 403b plans. Certainly in our world, we love our acronyms. So they're plans that meet the requirements of ERISA, which is defined on the screen, that meet certain revenue code, internal revenue code, requirements in order to receive tax benefits. But at the end of the day, they're used for saving money. They're used for retirement. And as we know in this country, there's a lot of talk about retirement and frankly, the lack of savings. But these types of plans are what's available to most employees. And so they allow employees to save on a pre-tax basis. In other words, they don't pay taxes today. They reduce their taxable income today, and they pay that down the road. In some plans, and probably more than not at this point, you can also save on a Roth basis, or I'm going to pay the taxes today because I think down the road taxes are going to be higher. And so we've got some flexibility within these plans, but at the end of the day, it's a set of rules. It's fairly rigid. You can pick from certain rules and different features of the plans, but they all kind of have to come off a menu that the IRS and Department of Labor set and say, hey, these are okay to pick from. Some of the others include things like pension plans or defined benefit plans. Those are still out there. They're still a thing. They are less common than they used to be when things started shifting over to the 401k, but they're still out there. Things like cash balance plans are an interesting way to save more money for typically, business owners and things like that. And then ESOPs, these are employee-owned companies, employee stock-owned companies. And so there's several different things that fall under the definition of qualified plan. And you're probably familiar with some of them. Let's talk a little bit now, Bob. What's a non-qualified plan?
The non-qualified plan is where you get to have fun. So qualified plans, when you think about them, the first word that always comes to my mind after doing this for over 3 decades is restrictions, restrictions, restrictions. Anytime I'm dealing with a highly compensated executive or an ACE, if they're involved in a qualified plan, a 401k, and let's say they're making $500,000 a year and they want to put away, 25% of their income because that's what the individual in the company that's making $50,000 is doing. But they can't because of restrictions. Their limitations is what you can put into the plan. It opens up a little bit when you become a little bit older. However, generally speaking, even once you get past the age 50, there's still restrictions of what you can put into these plans, and they're significant. There's also restrictions in governance around timing, when the distribution has to start being taken out. If they're not taken out properly, is there a problem? If there's too much put in the plan and the plan suffers where the lesser than highly compensated folks are putting in enough money into the plan, does that restrict highly compensated folks even more? Do they get taxable checks back? And so all these restrictions disappear when you get into the non-qualified world. Non-qualified world has been around for decades and decades. It simply means it doesn't have to succumb to all the different ERISA rules that qualified plans have. So there's differences in eligibility. So I can allow anybody that's a highly compensated executive into a non-qualified plan, or if I don't want to allow all those folks in because maybe they have different benefits or bonuses or whatever it may be, I don't have to. So I have a lot of eligibility choices that I can make as a company versus what's being governed by ERISA or the Department of Labor on these things. The other thing that I can do in a non-qualified plan is I can open up the savings amounts to be up to 100% of compensation. And it can be W-2 income. It could be 1099. It could be board fees. It could be commissions. It can be, really any type of compensation that I have coming in through the company, I can allow to be eligible into the plan to be deferred. And then it starts to act like a 401k. Once it's deferred, I pick and choose from the eligible investments. Whatever my value is and whatever it grows into is based on whatever investments I've chosen. And so, while there are some good similarities, a lot of the bad restrictions are eliminated with the non-qualified plan. The other thing that happens with the non-qualified plan is as I defer dollars into it, I don't have to wait till I'm retired to get money out. I can take money out while I'm actively working in programs called in-service accounts, and these are exactly what they're defined as, in-service accounts. I could be 50 years old, and I'm going to retire when I'm 65, but I have a need for money for my kids' education or maybe just a second house or the sports car or whatever it is that I want to do. So I can design money to come out of the plan without restriction or penalty long before I'm actually retired. The other thing that I can do is if I am a company and I want to, and I'm trying to build a retentive program, I can eliminate the chargeback headaches that I go to if my 401k is not having enough dollars from the rank and file people going into the plan and is causing chargebacks for the top hat people. I can eliminate that. In fact, there's a codified rule 410B that enables me to carve out the top hat people or highly compensated executives from the 401k and just have it in a non-qualified plan, and therefore I'm never going to suffer any negative testing again as I go forward with that 401k. I can also eliminate things like safe harbor plans. If they're not effective for me, I don't want to keep vesting money as one of the shareholders just to see employees constantly coming and going through the doors. I can fix that. I can put vesting back in. I can make the rules flexible for the participants, but also I can make it functional for the company as well. And these plans are called a lot of different things. There's a couple on the screen: deferred comp, split dollar life, SERP is a company-sponsored retirement plan, executive bonus. There's a lot of different plans. We see about 30 different types of non-qualified plans out there. These can be funded with company cash. They can be funded with participant deferrals. They can also share in the carry-forward tax deduction, which becomes incredible, especially if you start up a plan and you're in the net operating loss, and a plan is going to start paying out 5 or 10 years, and by then you'll see the company being in a profitable area. You're going to have a large deduction. You'll want to set up a plan early so that you can get these. Or if you are in a plan with a net operating loss today, and the company just has a 401k, that means the company's losing all the deductions associated with putting those participant account values into that plan. If they had a non-qualified plan for the top hat people, they wouldn't be receiving them today, but they'd receive them in the future. So they wouldn't lose them. They would just put them off to the future, and that helps companies out tremendously. That gets a little heady, a little confusing. I get it. But it's very, very profitable for companies and generally puts millions of dollars in companies' pockets once they go through that. Most companies think that if I'm in a net operating loss, it's a horrible time to be in any plan, and that's actually not true. It's the opposite. The other thing that we see all the time are ways to really salvage things like ESOPs, plans that were put together. With the ESOPs, you have a promissory note that you have to pay back to the bank at some point in time. And with a non-qualified plan, if you set it up using one of the more formal funding programs, COLI, corporate-owned life insurance, which has some options where a company could actually have a tax-free asset when it's set up properly. By doing this, they can actually put the life insurance as part of that repurchase obligation to pay off the bank note on the ESOP plan. And so, we see a lot of plans that come together that way. A lot of companies, too, will fund non-qualified plans using bank funding. They'll actually go to the bank, just like your business, and instead of the company putting in millions of dollars to fund for executive benefits, they'll work with the bank. And this is very good financially from a company standpoint, because the money that the bank puts in the plan is not taxable to the company. The company generally, when it's funded properly, will allow those dollars to grow free of taxes on the gains, and they will not be required to pay back or get taxed on the distributions, and that comes out of tax code. And so there's a lot of great benefits that exist on doing these plans properly. And what we demonstrate to everybody, one of the key differences between a non-qualified plan and a qualified plan is a non-qualified plan actually reduces cash flow necessary to pay their executives versus simply paying it out and taking a deduction. And it also serves and builds a profit sharing plan for the shareholders of the company, or for the company to use these dollars in other fashions. And they are generally in the numbers in the millions on these plans for small and mid-sized plans. And so if you don't have a plan and you're losing people due to turnover, non-qualified plan is probably the solution that sits out there. Designs can be very different, but some structure of non-qualified plan will make your lives much, much easier, much less expensive, and it'll make your executives very happy, and they won't be running off to other shows that's someplace across the street.
Yeah, one thing I see a lot of times, in exploring both qualified and non-qualified plans, in the qualified plan world, a lot of companies, even if they want to be safe harbor, allow their highly paid folks to max out the benefits in that plan, one thing that a lot of companies won't do is profit sharing in the qualified plan world. And the reason that typically is because it gets really expensive. In the qualified plan world, with the testing the way that it is, the non-discrimination testing, at least it doesn't discriminate against your rank and file employees, but they won't do the profit sharing because you have to include some of the contributions to those lower paid employees. And so if you're just trying to direct money to some of the key contributors toward the top of that corporate ladder, you can't really accomplish that very cost effectively in the qualified plan world, where, if you add a non-qualified plan, now suddenly, instead of looking at, maybe trying to skew 80% of the money to those targeted individuals, I can get 100% going to the employees that you want it to go to in the non-qualified world in a very efficient manner, and within all the rules. It's a great, they really do work very well together. And so when we look at these plans, one of the natural questions I think a lot of people has is, how are they similar? They sound like they're similar. They sound like they're different. But how are they similar is usually the first thought that comes to people's mind. And despite some of their different tax treatments and regulatory treatments, they're both designed to help employees save for the future, whether it's retirement or other in the non-qualified world. It's all about saving. It's all about setting aside money, be it Roth after tax or the pre-tax that you see in non-qualified and 401k. It's all about the savings. Employers offer both types. They want to provide benefits to their employees. I would argue at this point, especially coming out of the pandemic, we've seen a real shift in employee expectations around benefits. And 401k, I call them table stakes now. It's like the health insurance. You just have to have it. It's part of you got to pay to play, right? It's just part of being an employer at this point. And so they're just part of those more standard offerings that we're seeing. Taxes on contribution earnings can be deferred until they're received. So again, it's about, and we talked about it in our last video, it's about giving employees control back and giving them control of when they're going to owe that tax liability to the government. We all would like to minimize what we give away, and that we'll never get back when it goes to Uncle Sam. But both of these plans allow that ownership to the participants. Employers can contribute on behalf of participants. In both cases, they're not required to, but they can. And both types of plans are really, the primary focus is recruiting and retaining. How do I bring in the right people and keep them around and ultimately allow them to retire on their terms? Bob, do you want to run through how they're different?
I can let the people listen to today's video read the slide. It talks about the ERISA applications on their IRS limits, all these different things. Big thing to know about how they're different is when I talked earlier about restrictions. If a HCE or a highly compensated executive is offered both a non-qualified plan and a qualified plan side by side, for financial reasons, I can't think of a reason why you would take the qualified plan unless the company was at some kind of tremendous risk, because a non-qualified plan is a company asset and a company liability versus a 401k or a qualified plan is off the books and it's protected a little bit differently. Outside of that, assuming a plan is funded, it really eliminates most of the risk that's ever in existence with a non-qualified plan as a balance sheet item. I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for over 3 decades, and I've actually had companies that have gone through financial reorganizations and corrections and all that, never have had to talk to participants about why they lost money in a non-qualified plan as a balance sheet product, because of something that happened that they weren't expecting. Because when a plan's funded properly, that all goes away. So that said, when it gets down to restrictions that are lifted, eligibility, companies are no longer forced in a non-qualified plan to determine who's going to be in the plan or not, as long as they meet the level of highly compensated executive. So if they have good employees that are going to be necessary people to help the company grow or stay going in the right direction, or they're part of a class of people like directors, senior VPs, C-suite folks, all those things, non-qualified plans, just an easy solution. The other restrictions that you get away from are limitations of how much you can put in. Again, 401ks, qualified plans have tremendous limitations about what you can put in. And then they have rules about when you have to start taking it and when it has to be taken out, and how much you can take out, how much you can borrow against, all these different rules that most normal people have no idea of what those rules mean to them until they get into a situation where one of the rules blocks them significantly on what they were intending or hoping that money would go for. Non-qualified plan, very different conversation. I could have up to 100% of my bonus can go pre-tax into a plan, 100% of my salary, 1099 commissions, long-term incentive comp, even RSUs can go inside of these plans so that I can control when I take this money out. I can control how much taxes I'm going to be paying, because if I'm in a high-tax state like California where I'm at, and I end up with $3-5 million in these savings plans inside of a non-qualified plan, which is common, when I go to take it out, maybe I want to retire to Florida or Nevada or any other lesser state tax and qualify for what's called source tax. And instead of paying California tax, I can pay the taxes of the other state that the money comes out of. So I lose a lot of restrictions there. Vesting can be whatever a company wants it to be. Vesting can be the same for every participant in a non-qualified plan, or it can be completely different based on the class of the participants, maybe the income of the participants, whatever a company wants to do. Or maybe a company's just recruiting a new senior salesperson or executive or CEO or whatever it might be, and they want to make something very specific to that person. Then this is called a tiered plan. You're going to change what your strategies are for vesting in that case based on you're trying to recruit somebody in a particular situation. Assets cannot be protected from the creditors. However, this is what I mentioned before when I was talking about if a plan is funded and the company is strong, You should never have any worries or anything about a plan. And a plan is not going to just automatically die one day. A company's going to start going the wrong way for generally a couple of years. And at some point in time, they're going to freeze or kill the plan and pay everybody out, which is not the intended goal for the participants, but at least you avoid losing your dollars in case the company, was to go into desperate times, that type of thing. The company assets from a corporate standpoint, when companies save money on non-qualified plans, they almost always return those values back into the non-qualified and qualified plans to improve both plans on vesting, matching values that are coming from the company, but the company's doing it smart. Instead of pulling the money out of the company's pockets, they're pulling it out of plan assets due to tax law that exists in these programs. You have in-service distributions. In a non-qualified plan, you have loans. In a qualified plan, loans are restricted. You have certain values that you can take out in the form of a loan in a qualified plan. With a non-qualified plan, you simply state, hey, I want this money in this account to come out in 3 years or 5 years or whatever your goal is, and you can still be working without restriction. That money comes out. In either case, if you suffer disability or there's an inability because of you have a tax bill or something, you need to get out of plan, you have emergency need for dollars, you can get to the money in both programs. The deductibility and the cash flow, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that with this call because it can get pretty confusing, so we usually talk specifics with companies. But when you look at these plans, from a cash flow standpoint, from a company that's sponsoring both plans, a non-qualified plan enables a company to actually reduce the cost necessary or cash flow necessary to fund executives versus simply paying them out and taking a deduction today. The company also recognizes a couple of benefits. One, whatever they're using as the funding vehicle, generally an insurance product for long-term investment needs, generally mutual funds for short-term. But when you set a program up properly, because of tax effect and timing, that corporate asset will produce a profit, as well as the corporate asset shares in the long-term distributions of the plan value. So in a 401k, I have a group of people deferring $1 million, and the company's in a 35% tax bracket. They get a $350,000 deduction in the year that was set up. In the non-qualified plan side, they defer the $1 million. I forego the 35% deduction today, but in 6 years, that $1 million has grown to $2 million. Now I pay everybody out. Company receives $700,000 of deduction because they shared in the value from an asset standpoint, a carry forward deduction on that money. So the company's values grow with a non-qualified plan. They don't with a qualified plan. And if a company's in a pass-through situation like an S-Corp, you can still allow the owners to get to those dollars today, just like you would if it was going into a 401k, except for it's going into a non-qualified plan, given the participants that are highly compensated areas to save money and to stay with the company and all those great things. So when I look at the pros and cons or key differences, I really see non-qualified plans, even though we sell both, I see non-qualified plans as 95% of the time much more advantageous than a qualified. Qualified is simply the group hug. It's great for the rank and file folks. It's great for some of the lower earning HCEs, but for the HCEs, highly compensated executives, they have to have some kind of non-qualified plan in order to achieve their goals.
Yeah, and one thing, that we've been talking with clients about a lot lately, because it's coming soon, is, upcoming change for the qualified plan catch-up rules. And I know that's very specific, but as you were talking, it jumped to mind. Starting next year in 2026, for any highly compensated folks who earn more than around $145,000 this year, if they want to do catch-up next year, in other words, they're 50 or older, they want to do those catch-up contributions, it's going to have to be Roth. So the rules there are changing, and they're going to continue to change. We've had Secure 2.0, already talking about Secure 3. So those changes are going to continue to happen. Now, I would argue that any company that has highly compensated folks who are going to be affected by that rule, I don't see any reason not to look at a non-qualified plan simply to give those executives and high-paid folks the ability to continue to make a catch-up, but do so in a tax-advantaged way that works for them, and not just because the government says it has to be in Roth money. So those things are going to continue to change. It's crazy.
Well, no, it's funny, David, you talk about that. I've worked with the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee in the past several White Houses over the last 25 years. And there are always slick ways of making it sound like they're doing the American public a favor, but it's not. These new catch-up provisions require immediate tax hits to people right away. So it's not beneficial. It's just another, I'd call slick way of the government getting into the pockets before people get the money themselves. Yeah,
you're right. So we've got our contact information up here. I did just want to remind everybody that, from a perspective of, if you don't have a plan like this in place today, a non-qualified plan that is, or even a qualified plan, and you have questions, reach out. We're here to help. Shoot us an email, give us a call, check out our website for more content. We also do audits on existing plans. So for companies who already have a non-qualified plan or a qualified plan in place, and you're just interested in a second opinion on how it's set up, how it's working for you and for the participants, reach out. Let us know. We're happy to help. Thanks, everybody.